appreciate you guys coming out today on this nice Tuesday day in Boone. So just opening a statement, I appreciate you guys being here. Look forward to getting spring practice started today. It's been a long 2 months getting the staff together, implementing a new offense. It's something we're looking forward to. It's time to build our 20 football team and make our own identity. Just a few things, few goals for the spring. We're gonna make sure we build our depth while improving our technique. That'll be big this spring. Learn and execute our system, and it's our system. And the last thing, we got to identify the strengths and weaknesses for our football team. Just a few key updates. Injury-wise, Corey Sutton, Tommy Dawkins, Greg Johnston, Cam Peoples, Chris Willis, Michael Queen, Trey Caldwell, and Daishan Razak. They'll be out for the spring due to injuries. They are coming along just fine, and I look forward to getting those guys back during fall camp. So we'll open up the questions.
Sean, this is the first chance we've had to really speak with you since you got your staff in place, which you mentioned. I know it was probably a very interesting process, probably some surprises along the way. If you had to kind of summarize going through putting your first coaching staff together, what were maybe the highlights and maybe some of the key things you learned through that process?
Well, I think the biggest thing I learned is take my time, because when I was introduced as the head football coach here, I could have hired a staff within 24 hours. But just make sure I had the right people. And that was big to me, the right people in this program, understands what this program's about, and be here for the kids. And again, we want to make sure we graduate our players and win championships. And that was the marching orders from myself to the staff, is whatever we do from here on out is for our players, and to make sure they get a meaningful degree and to win championships.
You've got a couple of guys on the staff with NFL experience. In the case of Coach Nunn, a lot of NFL experience. You know, as you thought about that process, what are the unique benefits? I mean, football's football, but doing it at that level has to come with some nuances that are probably different than college. How do those things kind of meld together and bring value to what you're looking for?
Well, I know as Coach Nunn, a great football coach, but I think he's an outstanding person. And when you sit down and talk to him about what he's about, he's a family guy. But when you have a chance to bring a Super Bowl champion to Appalachian State, that's big. It's big for recruiting. It's big for the players. Our guys are eager to learn from him. They watched a lot of tape the last few days on the New York Giants, the Cleveland Browns, the Tampa Bay Bucks. So they know what he has to offer, and those guys are eager to learn. And again, we want the best people, the best coaches we can get, and that's what we'll do from here on out.
You mentioned depth in spring ball being an important factor in this whole thing. You've got some really known quality veterans on both sides of the ball, especially on offense. You know, how, as you guys have talked as a staff, how do you go about making sure that you're getting meaningful reps for your veterans, kind of knowing what they know, but also making sure that you're getting those younger guys worked in and have the chance to evaluate them well?
Well, the good thing is we have an outstanding quarterback. And to be able to win football games in this conference, you need an experienced quarterback. So we know what Zach Thomas is and what he has to offer. He doesn't have to prove anything to us. He's proved that the last 3 years. The offensive line, I was fortunate enough to coach in the last 4 years. I know what those 5 guys have to offer. We'll get those guys meaningful reps, but like you mentioned earlier, we have to get the young guys ready. I look at Lyle Ayers and Craig McFarland. I look at Gage Blackston. I look at Anderson Hardy on the offensive line. Those guys have to be ready to play come August. And our goal is to play 8 offensive linemen during a game, and we have to build depth. We're a very senior-heavy team this year. We know that. And this spring is all about developing our depth and our young guys.
Sean, first off, just wanted to ask you, is it kind of relieving to get this point now? Because I know it's been pretty wide open since you got the job. So is it relieving to get to football practices again?
It is. It's something that spring football is my favorite time of year, because you're not game planning for week to week for an opponent. And you get a chance to really get around your players and get to know your guys. It's really good for our new coaches to come in to really spend time with those guys. Not just in the football field, but outside of football, taking our guys out to eat, bringing them in on one-on-one meetings for academics, and just get to know our players. I just know for me personally, there's a chance to get back on the football field is something I know that I'm good at. And with the head job, every day is a different experience. And some days it's like drinking water out of a fire hose sometimes. But it's something I look forward to, something I've been prepared for the last 20 years of coaching. So to get back on the football field is a blessing.
You mentioned making y'all's offense, and you know if you look at Peterson's background, he's kind of been successful in a few different ways with offenses, and obviously you're going to have what you want to see, and then there were some things that Drink brought to the table that was good stuff, and even with Sat, there was like really good stuff in those offenses. So how do you go about trying to mix all that together and making it work?
Well, we know our identity, and that's the good thing. We know that we're going to be a dominant downhill run team and be able to stretch the field vertically. And this whole process of interviewing offensive coordinators, I knew what I wanted. And we interviewed roughly 4 offensive coordinators, and I kept coming back to Tony. We talked the same lingo, had the same values, the same ideas of what we want to do, and he was able to add some things to the system. But it'll be very similar in some ways, but also be different.
What's it been like for you just getting away from offensive line a little bit and kind of having this bigger view just over the whole program and just being away from some guys that you've really kind of helped grow up these last few years?
Well, it's been bittersweet in some ways. I know our first team meeting we broke, and I went to the offensive line room just on accident, to be honest with you. But to have a chance to sit on other meeting rooms and listen to our coaches talk, we have outstanding football coaches here that are good men, and it's a joy to sit down in a defensive room and talk to those guys. And this is what I would do to you if I was playing this defense, or vice versa. But it just gives you a better chance to get a better feel for the whole football team.
How do you like those guys that responded to Nick coming back and being involved with them day to day now?
Oh, it's been great. They know Nick. Nick's been in the system for the last 5 years. He grew up here in the program, and he knows what it means to wear the black and gold. If you cut him today, he'd be bleeding black and gold. So they're excited to have him here. He'll bring some energy to the room, which is always good. And again, he's a great football coach.
Kind of touched on it a little bit with the meeting room, but as a head coach, you have to pay attention to the secondary, to the offensive backfield. Is it tempting to kind of maybe look the other way, and especially if you hear some kind of noise that?
No, I told the defense, don't let them score touchdowns. Pretty simple. But
I just wonder if it's going to be tempting to look at that offensive line just to.
Well, of course, that's what I've done for the last 20 years. That's been my baby in coaching. I always have a feel for those guys and what they're doing. Always be an individual, be around Nick and give him my ideas. But again, this is Nick's offensive line, and in order for him to grow as an offensive line coach, he has to stub his toe sometimes, and I'll be there to help him. But I won't be far from it.
You mentioned that you had to take your time. That's one of the things you learned. What were some of the things that I guess you touched on the assistant coaches, but what were some of the things that maybe you didn't think would be, gee, do I really have to do that too? Or, just some of the changes maybe you saw coming or didn't see
I think the
coming.
biggest thing, when you're a position coach, you're in charge of 15 people. And when you're a head coach, you're in charge of not only 115 players, you have your coaches, their families, support staff, academics, the meals, everything falls on your table. And I've said this many a times, as an assistant coach, you make suggestions. As a head coach, you make decisions. And those are sometimes tough decisions you have to make, but you do what you think is best for the program, and you move on with it.
Has it come to where you don't get to go home at, say, 7 o'clock at night? You got to stay till 10 o'clock, or was it always like that?
No, my wife makes sure I'm home pretty early. We have 2 kids in sports, so we're running constantly. But we stay till the job gets done, and if that's 10 o'clock, then it's 10 o'clock. But we're going to have a life outside of football, and we'll do our best as long as we're here. When we're here, we'll be working, and when we're away, we'll be with our families. But some days it takes longer, and some days you get home at 5 o'clock. Very rarely, though.
Was there an instance when it was kind of your head coaching moment where you thought, wow, I actually have to make the decision on that? Was there a first that you remember?
When Doug offered me the football job, the head job, we had to make a lot of decisions. Every day's been decision making for myself. But again, I have great support staff from the chancellor down to our athletic director, and we have great people in this organization. So if I ever need to ask a question, I just go across the hall and we figure a solution.
Kind of a stupid question alert. You can't do it by yourself. You got to really rely on the help of the staff, the help of everybody else to make sure it works.
Without question. And my job is to delegate now. But again, it falls on my shoulders. So we delegate it and to make sure the job gets done. But again, I have to make sure those tasks get accomplished.
Everything you hoped for so far?
And more.
Hey, so early on there was a lot of support for you to be the next head coach. Are you feeling any pressure to live up to that support that was given to you?
No pressure. This is what you signed up for. And when you come to Appalachian State, you expect to win. Our fans expect to win. Coaches expect to win. Our players expect to win. So all I can do is the best job I can do personally and for this program. And then after that, it's all I can do. But I just know that every day we're here, we're working for our kids and for our fans. And just know we want to put a great product on the field.
Cool. I think among the earliest spring practice starts again at the FBS level. Just can you kind of share a little bit just your philosophy on why this is a good fit to start spring practice this early?
Well, again, when you have a bowl game December the 22nd, I believe this past year, and our kids got a break and they come right. We have phase one, and phase one is when we get back to the weight room with Brad, and now we're in phase two. And the good thing for the older guys, there's not much learning for those guys, so it's still fresh in their minds. Then on the back end, after spring practice is over, the strength coach gets 13 to 14 weeks with our players. And if you happen to stub your toe or have an injury, we get those guys back before fall camp. So I got that with Coach Satterfield here, and I always said if I was the head coach, that's where I wanted to get to. And it's proven it's been successful, and we'll stick with it.
Sean, just defensively, with quite a few starters gone from last year's team on that side of the ball, just kind of what's the evaluation process of looking at these guys this spring, and how wide open is it as far as, deciding between, some guys that have quite a bit of experience now and maybe some guys that stepped up last year, like, Nick Ross or, Nick Hampton, guys like that?
Well, that's what spring practice is for. And we have a preliminary depth chart. We'll start today. But that chart's always moving day to day. It won't be stagnant. We want competition, guys who want to compete. But it's our job as coaches to put the best 11 players on the field. And for the next 15 days, 15 practices, we'll figure that out.
This one's really important. Are you going to keep wearing the hoodie and the hat?
I was going to wear it today, but I figured I'd better wear something a little cleaner.